Welcome to another episode of the Snakes Are Us TV podcast presented by Southeastern Reptile Rescue and its founder and director, me, Jason Clark.
Are you ready?
Welcome. Thank you guys for joining me tonight. I'm actually starting this episode an hour and a half later than I normally would. Nothing bad happened. It was just, it is my daughter's 18th birthday today. So I started off this morning not doing anything that I wanted to do. And I got up early and I got dressed to go to the gym, and walking out the door, my daughter calls me and she wasn't feeling well. Had to go to school and pick her up, and had to go to the doctor's office with her. So all day today, I have been way behind schedule. And then, so this evening when we were going to celebrate my daughter's 18th birthday, we went out to eat, and then we came back here to the house and had some really good Oreo ice cream cake from Dairy Queen. It was really good, too good. And I didn't want to hurry up, so I was like, I can either stop and miss the festivities and go join y'all for the podcast at 8 o'clock, or I can postpone it. So I don't like to postpone it, but we did tonight, and hopefully won't have to do it again. So thank you guys for coming. My name is Jason Clark, and this is episode number 26 of the Snakes Are Us TV podcast. This episode is entitled Phobias. You know, I may say this every week. Every time I'm done with one of these episodes, I immediately start trying to think of, okay, what are we going to do next week? And I'll be honest with you, it is so stressful because I can never think of anything. I can never say, okay, this would be a good idea. Let me talk about this. And I'm like, I can't think of anything. But then as the week goes on, something will happen, or a phone call will come in, or a snake call will come in, or something will happen. And as I'm going through this situation, I'm like, oh, you know what? This would be good to talk about on the podcast. So that's kind of how all these topics come up from week to week. So I've come up with 26 topics so far, 26 episodes. So we'll see if we have a 27th. So thank you guys for being here. We record this live normally at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we're doing it at 9:30 p.m., but live on YouTube. So if you would like to go there on YouTube and join us for the live, you can also participate in the live chat, which I'm about to pull up now, and see who is in here with us. Hopefully we got some people in here in the chat with us. And then later we will upload the audio to streaming platforms all over the world. So good. All right, let's go to the chat real quick before we jump into phobias, which I think this is going to be a fun one, because I actually did a little bit of research because I didn't know a lot about phobias, and I don't know, I kind of learned some stuff I didn't know. So who's here? So we've got Jasper Fiend. Good to see you back. Cheesy Cheetah here is back with us again. Thank you. Painted Rocks again. Chris Taylor texted me and said, hey, are you doing the podcast? So I said, yes, I'm doing it. We're going to do it a little bit late. And Candy's Critters is back. Glad to be here. Can't be here next week because I'm doing a snake show. Ooh, cool. That's awesome. Let's see here. Cheesy Cheetah says, I kind of like this time slot better. Well, you might, but other people won't. So I think I wish we could please everybody. 8 p.m., 9:30 p.m., it doesn't really matter to me, but I'm trying to keep it too late. Let's see here. So let's see. Cheesy Cheetah says, I watched Jason's presentation from last year's roundup he was at this past weekend on some random YouTube video. That's funny. Okay. Yeah. So this past weekend, I did the Wiggum Rattlesnake Roundup, and the Wiggum Rattlesnake Roundup is a reformed roundup. So they don't collect rattlesnakes or kill rattlesnakes. All the snakes are brought in by educational organizations, and there's positive education, promoting rattlesnakes, the benefits of rattlesnakes. So we had a really great time. The weather was absolutely perfect for this last weekend. And this weekend coming up is the Claxton Rattlesnake and Wildlife Festival in Claxton, Georgia. And so I will actually be leaving tomorrow, driving down for that. I'll be taking a bunch of snakes with me, our reptile exhibit. I'll be on stage each day, a couple times a day, I think, doing my snake show. And there'll be a lot of other snake organizations, conservation, reptile conservation organizations there. So if you are in the area, come by and check out the Claxton Rattlesnake and Wildlife Festival. This is, I've been there for many, many years. It's been going on more than a dozen years as far as the reformed. This used to be a rattlesnake roundup. It's not anymore. It's a reformed roundup. So we need to support these places that do that. So Chris Taylor says happy birthday to my daughter, and Cheesy Cheetah says same thank you guys for that. Lots of comments in the chat. Candy's Critter says she's working on spiders because figure some people try to work on their fear of snakes. So you should too. Yeah, if you have a fear, if you're going to teach people about snakes, you want to identify your own fears. And if you can figure out how to overcome that fear, then it makes it easier for you to teach people how to overcome their fear. Now, speaking of that, if you go back and listen to episode, I don't know, was it episode 2, episode 3, somewhere in there? It was entitled Fears, and I reveal my fear, and I do not want to overcome it. Okay, I don't think I should. I don't think I should overcome it. I think it's kind of a good thing, that fear that I have. So if you want to see that, go back and watch episode number 2 or 3 entitled Fears. So this episode is phobias. Now, when we talk about phobias, like for instance, you say the word ophidiophobia. Ophidiophobia they call it the fear of snakes, but I don't like calling it the fear of something, because that's not what it is. A phobia is not just being afraid of something. A phobia is having an over-the-top, extreme, irrational fear. So that's different than just being afraid of something, because it's not bad to be afraid of snakes. You got to have a little bit of fear. That's what keeps you alive. If you have no fear, I mean, just take, fear down to 0. There's no fear at all. Well, then what's going to stop you from picking up a rattlesnake and putting it around your neck like the guy in the video on our YouTube channel that did? If you have no fear, fear in the right amounts can keep you alive, but irrational fear can get you hurt, and no fear can get you hurt. So no fear is not a good thing. Over-the-top, extreme, irrational fear is not a good thing, but a healthy respect, that's the level of fear I think you want to kind of have there. So, all right. So before we jump into these, I was looking up different phobias, and I was thinking, okay, I wonder what like the most common phobias are. And then I'm wondering, okay, where do phobias come from? How do you get a phobia? How do you get rid of a phobia? Does everybody have a phobia? And so I learned some cool stuff. So the top 10 most common phobias here in America, number 1 is acrophobia. Acrophobia is the fear of heights. Okay? The fear of heights. Now, I've always considered myself a person who likes heights. I like to look out of the windows of airplanes and fly in helicopters and look off of skyscrapers and things. If I've climbed up on them before, which I've done that. I remember one time, this is so stupid. This is a very dumb thing that I did. Don't ever do this. My great uncle owned some land and had a cabin. When I say cabin, I use that word loosely. It was barely a cabin, but it was cool. And so me and a friend of mine from high school went, and he let us camp out in the cabin one time. And somewhere on the property was a 6-foot chain link fence with barbed wire around the top of it. And there was I guess a cell phone tower, and really stupid thing. And we climbed the fence like at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and climbed the cell phone tower just a little ways. And after I got 30, 40 feet up, I was like, this is really stupid to be doing this without proper equipment. People who do this for a living have equipment to do this with. And I remembered, I actually have climbing equipment. Let me go get. So we left, went to my house. So stupid. And I got a harness, and I had this clip on it that would clip to a cable, which was on this tower. And as you climbed up, it just followed behind you. And if you failed, this cord would grab onto the cable and you wouldn't hit the ground. So I did go climb a radio tower when I was years ago. I think I was a teenager. It was a very dumb thing to do. But so I've always liked heights. However, one thing that I've noticed is as I've gotten older, and I realized, man, if I fall from this height, I can picture what that might do to my body. It wouldn't be a good thing. And so sometimes when I get up there, I'm like, oh man, okay, I don't like this. So I remember years after that, I started kind of feeling that way about heights. And I was like, I don't want to be, I like heights. I don't want to be afraid of heights. So I was like, what can I do? So I happened to be in Florida on vacation at the time, and they were having the bungee jumping thing. And I was like, I could go bungee jumping. But I've always had this fear of, what if the bungee cord breaks and then you just hit the ground? And, and if the bungee cord breaks, you'll never know that it broke because when you hit the ground, you're not going to know anything. So I chose one that had one of those huge 10-foot air mattress things underneath it. So if it broke, you just hit that and you don't die. That's the one I chose. And it was 120 feet. So pretty high, 120 feet. And it took you up in a crane. And they said, when you pay for this, if you pay an extra $10, you can do 2 jumps. I was like, well, yeah, it's a bargain, So I paid for 2 jumps. And when they took me up in a crane, they put you on this little ledge out this little door, and you're standing, facing the little bucket that you're in. And they just kind of say, let go. When you let go, you just kind of fall backwards. And I was like, it's going to be so cool, like I'm flying. It was not like that at all. You're going so fast. You're like, this is not how I would imagine it feels to fly. It was terrifying. And I was like, that is not how I expected bungee jumping to be. That's not what I thought I was going to feel like. And I had one more jump to do, and I wasn't about to chicken out. Okay. So I went back and I bungee jumped a second time. I did use both of my jumps, and both of them were equally as terrifying. I thought I was going to die each time, but I did it. And, but it was really cool. So that's acrophobia, the fear of heights. Then you got aerophobia, which is the fear of flying, which they say that about 10 to 40% of adults in the U.S. have. And so I don't have aerophobia. I'm not afraid of flying. Then there's arachnophobia, which that one's, I want to say that's one of the most common, if not the most common fear, is arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Speaking of the fear of spiders, my friend Kyle, Cottonmouth Kyle in South Georgia, we were in the swamp snake hunting, looking for cottonmouths in South Georgia, and Kyle was always telling me how he's afraid of spiders. And so we're in the swamp, and as we're walking around the swamp, and it's, the water is, 18 inches deep or so, and found a lot of snakes. And we come to this huge spider web with a big spider in the middle of it. And he's standing on one side, I'm standing on the other side, and I just kind of move because we're moving these spider webs. I don't like normally breaking spider webs because I think spiders are cool and I love their webs. But we're going down through these trails and you can't get through there if you don't move the spider web out of the way, unfortunately for the spider. But so I decided when I moved this spider web to kind of move it onto Kyle. And so that was, he said it has some very colorful language, and that was my entertainment for the night. But unfortunately, the spider did lose his web that night. But spiders are cool. I love spiders. Then, of course, ophidiophobia, fear of snakes. Now, I keep saying fear of snakes because that's what the definitions I've got here say. But it's not a fear of snakes. It's an abnormal or irrational fear of snakes, because I don't think a healthy fear of snakes is necessarily a bad thing. Then cynophobia is the fear of dogs, which I think I should have. I don't. I'm not afraid of dogs. I love dogs. We have dogs. I do snake aversion training with dogs. I don't have a fear of dogs, but I think I should because, and I think I mentioned this in the episode on this podcast entitled Bites, where so this is what's wrong with me. My earliest memory that I can remember was I was about 2 years old, and my earliest memory is me laying on the ground with a Doberman on top of me with his mouth on my face. And I remember going to the hospital, putting a straitjacket, having my face stitched up, Now, you wouldn't know to look at me, that I've been mauled by a dog, okay? Or maybe you would. I don't know. But you would think I would be terrified of dogs, but I'm not for some reason. Now, how do you say this one? Trypanophobia? Trypanophobia? I don't know if I might have this one, is the fear of injections. 20 to 30% of adults have trypanophobia. I don't like getting shots. I mean, I don't have an irrational fear of it. I don't have a panic attack if I have to get a shot. So I guess I don't have that phobia. But I did have to go to the doctor not long ago, and they wanted to, how they do the finger prick test on you, where they prick your finger? And I was like, no, no, I'm not having that done. I promised myself years ago when I was like 5 years old, I would never have a finger prick done on myself again because it hurts. And so I told the nurse, no, you're not doing that. And she's like, why? I said, because it hurts. I don't want you pricking my finger. She said, but you work with snakes. You get bit by non-venomous snakes all the time. I said, well, not on my fingertips. I don't like that. And I know it's coming. So she said, well, we can do the inside of your forearm here. I said, that works just as well? She said, yeah. I said, then why don't you just do it there all the time? Because that's not bad. So she did it there. And if you ever have to have your finger pricked, tell them no and tell them to do the inside of your forearm. It doesn't hurt nearly as bad, and it works just as good, apparently. So that is cynophobia. That's trypanophobia. Then there's astrophobia. I don't have this one for sure. That is the fear of thunder and lightning. I actually like thunder and lightning, and I probably shouldn't because there were 2 different times in my life where I've had lightning strike so close to me that I could feel the effects of it. One time, my dad was holding me by my feet, playing with me out the door, and it struck a tree near us, and it knocked both of us down. It was that close. And then another time I was out as a teenager playing in the rain one day, and lightning struck very close to me, and I felt that. And so I should probably have more of a fear of thunder and lightning. I don't like to play in lightning for sure, but I enjoy a thunderstorm. I enjoy when a thunderstorm rolls in. I get up and go sit on the front porch and watch it, and I like to watch that. So then the next one, agoraphobia. Now this one is the fear of being alone in a situation or place where escape might be difficult. So sometimes I think, okay, maybe I've got that, okay, because it says it may include the fear of open spaces or crowded areas or situations that are likely to trigger a panic attack. Now, I'll go to concerts, I'll do that, but when I do that, I'm always like, okay, where are our seats going to be? Where's the exits in case something goes wrong? I don't want to be the last one out of here, and everybody's going to be trying to get out of here. So where are the exits at? I'm always thinking that. And but I remember when it says agoraphobia is the fear of being alone or in a situation where escape might be difficult. Have you ever been to Disney? If you go down there to the Magic Kingdom, I used to take the girls there every year. I just went this last year. I've only been to Epcot one time, and there's this ride in Epcot in that big sphere, that big ball thing at Epcot. And I don't know what it's called. I rode it once. I'll never ride it again. And you get in this little space shuttle thing, and what it does, it spins around so fast. You're looking at a screen. It feels like you're being shot up into orbit. Okay, and it's really cool. The problem was, I'm 6'5". I'm a big dude. This little space shuttle is not made for me. When they put me in there, there's got these controls. You're supposed to do a mission as you're going, and they put you in, and the controls kind of come back to you so you can reach them. But they were like in my face, and they pinned my arms against me, and I look a T-Rex trying to move. I couldn't move anything. and I could barely breathe, and I was like stuck in this machine for the duration of this ride, and I was trying to knock on the door to tell them to open it, but I couldn't move my arms to knock to tell them to open the door. And so that was definitely a fear of, I was stuck in that machine, and it was horrible, and I will never do that again. Misophonia, the excessive fear of germs and dirt. I definitely don't have that, okay? I'm always getting dirty, grabbing animals and getting in the mud, so I don't have that. And they say that that can be part of obsessive compulsive behavior, having to clean and wash your hands over and over and over. Misophonia, the excessive fear of germs and dirt. Then the last one, the top 10, last one is a social phobia, social anxiety disorder. Social phobia is the fear of social situations. Now, I'm not saying I have this, but however, okay, I heard someone describe this, and it described me so well. And it was Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld was talking about this very thing, about being in crowds. And he said, basically, I can't talk to any of you, but I can talk to all of you. So let me explain what that means. If you ask me to go into a party and there's 100 people in here, okay, and I'm just going to walk around and introduce myself to this little group of 3 or 4 people and make chit chat and small talk, and then go over here and introduce myself and make chit chat and small talk to these 5 or 6 people here, that would be absolute torture for me. I would hate every second of it. I wouldn't want to do it, and I would be very uncomfortable. But however, if you said to me, get on the stage, get this microphone, and talk to all 100 people here, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I would enjoy that. That would be perfectly fine with me. So most people aren't that way. Some people are that way. Most people are not. But that is exactly how I am. So a couple more that are not in the top 10 that I didn't want to mention, because I mentioned about one of the first episodes, episode 2 or 3, entitled Fear, where I talk about my fear. And basically, I don't like dead things. Not dead animals, or dead people, caskets, funeral homes, those things. It freaks me out. So Thanatophobia is the fear of death. Because some people were saying, well, are you afraid of dying? And I'm not. I'm not afraid of dying. I'm not afraid of death. So I don't have that. But necrophobia, maybe I have that. Necrophobia is the fear of dead things, corpses, places that contain dead things, graveyards, a tomb, a hearse, a funeral. I don't like those. So maybe I do have that. Now, my mom, I do know what my mom has. My mom has musophobia. Musophobia is the extreme, irrational fear of mice and rats. And she is absolutely terrified of mice and rats. And unfortunately for her, I have very much so, when I was growing up, and sometimes even still, enjoyed the fact that she has that, because I would torture her mercilessly with it. I'll never forget, we were driving to go do a reptile show somewhere, and somebody at the show had asked, hey, I've got a snake. Could I buy a bag of frozen mice from you? I got a Ziploc bag with 50 frozen mice in it. Can I buy that from you? I said, yeah, sure. So I knew my mom was coming, and she's terrified of mice and rats, even frozen ones in a Ziploc bag. And so I put them under the front seat on the passenger side and left it. And because she was going with me. So we're driving, and I said, hey, Mom, will you just hand me that bag underneath your seat? She goes, yeah. She reaches in there. As soon as she feels it, she knew what it was. And luckily, I had slowed down to pull in the driveway where we're going. So we're barely moving, but thank God, because she opened the door and exited the vehicle and didn't even think that we're moving. So she's definitely deathly afraid of that kind of stuff. All right, let me go back to the chat here real quick. See who all's in here. We got a lot of people more joining us and lots of comments. Thank you guys all for being here. Now, y'all guys are talking about spiders in here and jumping spiders. Jumping spiders are pretty cool. Nope, no bungee jumping for me. I'm tall enough. Yeah. I didn't do the bungee jump where they tie it to your ankles. I didn't like that one. The one I had a harness and it hooked to your chest. So that was much better, I thought. Did you pass out, or can you tell us? I didn't pass out. I remember it all very vividly. Living with Cable says, I'm not scared of spiders, just highly dislike them. Well, the day I had a tarantula over it with Living with Cable, that's my friend Chris, the day I have a tarantula at his office where he works, he sure did act like he was terrified of them because he didn't like it at all. So anyway, Chris says, I have a fear of taxes and I don't do shots. I don't blame you a bit. Loving Lisa says she is terrified of frogs. So is my sister. My sister is terrified of frogs. What is it about frogs? What is it about frogs that freaks you out? I don't know. She's terrified of those. Anyway, so as I started thinking about phobias, I started thinking about where these phobias, where phobias come from. And I hear all people say all the time, they'll be at my show when they'll be talking about snakes or asking questions, and they'll be saying, it's just something you're born with. You're just born with a fear of snakes. And I've never believed that. I didn't have anything to back it up. I just didn't believe you're born with a fear of snakes, because I would see parents coming to the shows we're doing, having babies with them, and the parents were terrified. The babies weren't. And the parents were like, no, you're not going to touch that. Get over here. You're not touching that snake. And I was like, every baby I see is never afraid of a snake because their parents are afraid of snakes. So I started looking, and there's a lot of research done on this topic about are you born with them? And apparently, human beings are not born with a fear of snakes. That is something that is learned later in life. And it can be learned very early in life. I'll tell you, even before you can talk, I can tell you how. Because I researched it, and it was kind of cool. One thing I had seen was about primates, monkeys, chimpanzees, and it was because one research, they were saying that those animals are born with a fear of snakes. It's genetically, ingrained in them. And because even people, one of the things you're saying is that genetically you can be more predisposed to phobias genetically. But there was a study done on infants with snakes, and that's what they found is you're not born with that fear. But the earliest fears that we know are phobias, the earliest fears and phobias that we have from infants that scientists think that you might actually be born with is two things. One is the fear of heights. Now, not really the fear of heights, but more the fear of falling. That's one that babies have. You put them on something high, they crawl to the edge of it. Of course, they can fall off, but if they're paying attention, they look down and say, oh, this is dangerous. Most babies kind of stop there. So they believe that most people are born with the fear of falling or the fear of heights. Then the other fear that they're born with is the fear of loud noises. That's what they say because they clap their hands, make a loud noise, and it scares the kid. Well, I don't know if that's a fear or just a shocking loud noise, but that's what they say. So one thing that people have asked me before when I'm doing a snake show or I'm out catching snakes and doing different things is like, oh man, why do you go catching snakes? Are you like an adrenaline junkie? You got to have that adrenaline. I don't feel that. I don't feel like I'm an adrenaline junkie. I don't feel that I chase after that stuff. I do like having fun and riding dirt bikes and four-wheelers and motorcycles, and I do like that. So maybe I am adrenaline junkie. I don't know. But what I started looking into and figuring out was the fact that I found out a couple years ago, somebody was saying, Jason, you've got ADHD. And I was like, well, first of all, I don't have ADHD, but here's how I know. Because one, ADHD is fake. It's not even a thing. It's just made up. That's the first thing. And secondly, I just don't have it. Okay. At least that's what I thought. So I started researching ADHD. And the more I research, I'm like, golly, dadgummit, I've got ADHD because this sounds exactly like me. So I ended up not telling anybody, and I went to the doctor, and I was like, he's like, what are you here for? I was like, I think I may have ADHD. Can you test me for it? And he's like, yeah. So they give me this test to fill out all this paperwork and answer all these questions. And it's like, strongly disagree to strongly agree. And I was like the extreme on every question, but I was like, I don't want to look like I'm, that crazy. So I kind of backed it off a little bit. Instead of strongly agree, I just agreed on some of them. And even then, they even came in and said, yeah, you more than qualify for ADHD medication. You have ADHD for sure. So I started on ADHD medication a few years ago, and it absolutely helped change my life. It was amazing. And so I still don't even take it every day, every now and then, depending on what I'm doing. But so I started figuring out that ADHD, people who do have ADHD, what they don't have a lot is the correct levels of dopamine in the brain. And so people with ADHD chase dopamine, okay? And if you don't know what dopamine is, dopamine are the chemicals in the brain that gives you feelings of pleasure, satisfaction, motivation, things like that. And so people with ADHD will chase motivation and chase those things like that. And so, do I have a need for adrenaline? I don't think I do crazy things on a regular basis to want to jack up my adrenaline. I don't feel that way at all anyway. So, but that's just, a little bit what I was thinking about why maybe I do some of the things that I do. Back to the chat over here. Speaking of shots, she says, I got that. You're talking about getting shots. Audrey had to go on her birthday today and get, because she wasn't feeling well, so I went ahead and took her to the doctor. And while we were there, they said, hey, she's 18 years old. Why don't we do her 18-year checkup while she's here? You don't have to come back. I was like, oh, yeah, this is great. And Audrey's like, no, this is not great because I have to have my blood drawn for that. So unfortunately, on her birthday, she had to have her blood drawn. So anyway, so back to this. Now, one thing that I've noticed, and I've said this to many people over the years, is when we talk about specifically the fear of snakes, the irrational fear of snakes, ophidiophobia. When we talk about that, one thing I've noticed is when I was, and you don't see these nearly as much as you used to, and I think it's really sad, nature documentaries. Who grew up watching this stuff? I used to love watching these nature documentaries of, most of them were like in Africa on the Serengeti plains with giraffes and lions and every kind of animal you can imagine. And I just loved for hours just watching these nature documentaries. It was just so cool. And I wish we had as many of them now as we used to. There's still some now you can watch. There's some good ones out there. But there was some really cool nature documentaries. David Attenborough, loved watching him. It was so cool. But what I noticed watching these nature documentaries, and I want you to, if you watch these, I want you to do this. And you can do this with any kind of movie you're watching, but specifically nature films. Picture you're watching a scene on the Serengeti in Africa, and the scene is a family, a herd, is that what they're called, of giraffes? What is a herd of giraffes called? It's probably some fancy name for it. These giraffes are prancing across the Serengeti. Beautiful scene. As you're watching this, and it's a scene at sunset, just perfect lighting, just gorgeous. Imagine the music that's playing in the background as you're watching this. Can you imagine what that music sounds like? Very uplifting. It goes with the scene, right? Now, a few minutes later, they transition to a different animal in Africa, maybe the Gaboon viper, or the African rock python, or the black mamba. And it doesn't matter what the snake is doing. It doesn't matter if it's climbing a tree and it's a beautiful scene, or slithering through the forest floor leaf litter. But one thing you'll notice is the music changes. It is not this beautiful, uplifting music. It is usually has a bass track to it that pumps right along with your heart, gets your heart beating, and it's that low, scary music. And what I tell people is when you're teaching somebody something, it's not so much the information that you're giving them, but it's how you make them feel about the information you're giving them. For instance, when I'm doing my snake show, one thing that I found out, and one thing that I think makes my show a lot of fun for the audience, is I recognize that this is for the most part, for the most part, these are general audiences, the general public. Of course, there's some people in the audience who love snakes, but for the most part, most of my audiences are people who don't like snakes. They're not there to learn about snakes because they think they already know everything they need to know about snakes already. That's usually who's in my audience. And so when I have a copperhead out, a cottonmouth, or maybe some rattlesnakes out, and they're rattling and striking or whatever they're doing, there's a certain amount of fear in the audience. There's a certain amount of tension that gets really thick sometimes in the audience. And when I put the snake away and there's no snake out, there's a few times where I've done some things to surprise the audience, maybe scare them a little bit. And what happens is it relieves the tension. I don't scare them with an actual snake. I don't ever do that. Unless you're my sister, I might scare her with an actual snake. But I don't scare the public or one of my audiences with an actual snake. And so you cut the tension, and then you bring a snake out again. And we do it with comedy. We try to make it funny, try to make it a really fun, funny show. And so at the end of the show, even though we've given really great sound information that, counteracts all these myths and things that people have been taught their whole life, what also happens is that people walk away and they're like, yeah, I just saw a venomous snake show, and I hate venomous snakes, but that was so much fun. And so even if I give them really good information, if the show was just terrifying the whole time, they leave with good information and still terrified of snakes. But if I give them good information and the show was a lot of fun, they leave with good information, and the fear, the irrational fear they have, the need to want to destroy these animals when they see it, it's kind of not there for most of the audience members, because people come to me all the time and like, you know what? I can't believe I'm saying this. I came to this show hating snakes, and I still don't like them, but I'm not going to kill any more of them when I see them. That's a comment I get repeatedly over and over and over and over. And so that's a lot of fun. Even when I need to put these videos up, even when you walk through my reptile exhibit, we have a 32-foot trailer, and I'll have it this weekend at the Wiggum. I'm sorry, I did Wiggum last weekend. It was there, but we'll have it this weekend in Claxton at the Rattlesnake Festival. It's a 32-foot trailer. You walk through it. There's 20 reptile enclosures in there. You can see the snakes and things. Well, at the beginning of this enclosure, because sometimes we'll have tortoises out, we have a big wooden box that I made, and on the top of it says tortoise treats. And you can open it, and get tortoise treats and feed the tortoises. Well, at least that's what people think. But no, there's a rubber snake that comes up when you raise the lid. So we'll set up a camera on that and get some really fun footage of people opening that lid and being nosy and getting a surprise because they were nosy. And people will yell at me. Then they're like, that was so mean. Why would you do that? Then they'll say, I'll be right back. And they'll go grab their family and friends and bring them and have them open the box. So that's a lot of fun, because it kind of, like I said, it breaks that tension, breaks that fear right before they go into this reptile exhibit, and they're surrounded by snakes in this exhibit. So I think that's sometimes a good thing to do. Phobias, because I was thinking, where do phobias come from? Phobias are often learned from parents or your brothers or sisters or your friends. Like if your parent has a fear of spiders, the kid will probably have a fear of spiders. Now, some studies think that's genetic. Maybe it is. I'm not a scientist, okay? I don't know if it's genetic. I don't know. Maybe that's what they say. I don't think it is. Here's what I think. I think that if a mom is scared of spiders or a dad is scared of spiders, and they got a kid over here who's not afraid of spiders, and they're over here going to touch a harmless riding spider, or just something that's not dangerous, and they're close to it, the parent will jerk them away from it and kill the spider and destroy it because it's such a dangerous thing, and that may make the kid afraid of. Okay, of course, we don't want kids picking up spiders, getting bit by spiders. That's not a good thing, but just from a young age, babies, even before they can talk, babies learn to look at faces of their mom and dad. And they start to read facial cues and facial expressions. And they see an expression on their mom or dad's face of fear in regards to whatever situation they're dealing with. That makes the baby learn, oh, okay, mom and dad's afraid of this. Maybe I should be too. And so that's where those behaviors become learned at a really early age. So you might be a person, maybe you're a person who's afraid of snakes, and you're like, I don't really know why I'm afraid of snakes. I've just been afraid of snakes my whole life. I was born this way. Well, the studies show that you're not born that way. You're taught that, and you may be taught that from before you could even walk is a possibility. And not because they're telling you snakes are bad, just because whoever you're around, maybe they're afraid of snakes, and just them gasping or screaming or having a certain facial expression that you see is enough to tell you as a baby, this is a bad thing that I'm afraid of, and you should also be afraid of it as well. So let's see. Lots of people in the chat. Thank you guys for being in here. So Cheesy Cheetah says, I played with daddy longleg spiders when I was younger. I never see them nowadays. It's likely they disappeared from the state. So here's something interesting, Cheesy Cheetah. Granddaddy longlegs, and I'll bring this up in my show sometimes, is I'll ask them, what's the most venomous spider in Georgia? And they'll say, well, granddaddy longlegs. And I'm like, well, I've never been bit by one. Like, well, their mouth's too small to bite you. Their fangs are too small. Here's the thing. Granddaddy longlegs don't have venom. And they don't have spinnerets. They can't make a web, which means they're not spiders. Daddy long legs, granddaddy long legs, whichever one you want to call them, they're not spiders. They have 8 legs, so they're arachnids, which are related to spiders, but they're not spiders. And they're actually called harvestmen. They basically harvest dead insects to eat because they can't kill anything because they don't have any venom, okay? But that is something that a lot of people believe is that daddy long legs or granddaddy long legs, depending on where you're from, which one you call it, people think that they are venomous, and they're not. So even though they have 8 legs, like I said, they're not spiders. Now, it's also thought that certain physical health conditions, which I don't know how they figured this out. Certain physical health conditions such as a thyroid problem or a heart arrhythmia, scientists say that those things can increase the risk of phobias. How is that? I don't know how they came to that. Anyway, then they say some drugs and substances such as caffeine or alcohol, these substances may make some people more anxious. And because you're already more anxious, you get around something that you're kind of a little wary about, and that makes a phobia grow from that. Then they say exposure to toxins or certain infections that you could have, such as a toxic mold or Lyme disease. There's some thought in the scientific community that Lyme disease, toxic mold can increase the risk of a person developing a phobia. Maybe a phobia against ticks because you got Lyme disease. I guess that would make sense. I don't know. Anyway, so, these phobias, there's so many of them. And some of them, if you go look up some of these phobias, I don't see how some of these things are real. Some of them are crazy, crazy things. Like if you go look up like weird phobias, I don't know, sometimes like this person, whoever is afraid of this person just wanting attention. Because I imagine somebody being annoyed with something and having a pet peeve, okay? Like that really annoys me. But calling that a phobia, like it's an irrational, over-the-top fear that, makes your anxiety shoot through the roof thinking you're going to die maybe. That's a phobia? I don't know. But there are some weird ones out there if you want to go look those up. Now, when you talk about fear, you often see that sticker, or you used to. I don't see them as much anymore. Back in the 90s, you saw them all the time. On the back of jacked up trucks, you'd see it and it said, "No fear." And I always tell people, no fear will get you killed, okay? If you don't have fear of getting hit by a car, you'll go cross the interstate without looking left or right. That's no fear, okay? No fear is not a good thing at all. Like I said, an irrational fear, an over-the-top fear is not a good thing. So how do you overcome these fears? Well, the first thing, which I don't have this first thing because of my fear of, I don't remember what it was called. What is the fear of not liking dead people or necrophobia? So the first step to getting over a fear is wanting to get over the fear. You have to want to get over it. But most people who are afraid of snakes, most of them, and not all of them, but some are like, you know what? I'm afraid of snakes so bad, I don't want to get over it. I just don't want to be around snakes. But those who come to the conclusion of, you know what? This is silly. I see this kid holding this ball python. Why am I so afraid of this? I want to get past this. When you start to have that mindset, then guess what? You will have the ability, I think, in my opinion, to get over that fear. And one of the ways that it's often recommended to start getting over fear is with exposure therapy. And I don't mean just start out holding snakes. Depending on how extreme your fear is, let's use snakes for example, okay? I remember years ago, I had a business card, and on my business card had a photo of a rattlesnake, an actual photograph of a rattlesnake. And there were some people who would not accept my business card because they didn't want a picture of a snake in their wallet. They don't want to carry a picture around it because they couldn't stand to look at a photo of it. And so as the years went by, I ended up changing the business cards. I don't have a picture of a snake on there anymore because I wanted people to take my business card. They wouldn't even look at it. But once you get to the point to where you're like, you know what, I can maybe I could get over this. It may be something as simple as getting to the point to where you can look at a picture of whatever it is you're afraid of. And that can be a very hard thing. If you actually have a true phobia, looking at a photograph of a snake will absolutely send somebody over the edge. So exposing yourself to that, which a picture can't hurt you, that's the easiest way to start. And then once you can look at a picture of a snake, just a photograph of one, what's the next step up? The next step up is a video of a snake with no sound, with it just muted, because you don't want to have a nature documentary with some blood pumping, heart pumping music in the background that's going to scare you worse. So you got to mute it and don't listen to what they're saying or listen to the music. Just watch a snake move. But some people are like, well, I don't like how they move. It just kind of freaks me out, and how they crawl like that. But the more you expose yourself to that, the more you realize, okay, this is not really as bad as I thought it would be. And so then once you get past, seeing a photograph, then seeing a video, then maybe you can see maybe a snake inside of a terrarium, behind glass, locked up. It's just laying over there. You can be in the room with it and see it in the enclosure. And it's locked up, it can't get to you. So maybe I don't know, maybe that's your next step. And then once you get okay with that, stay on the other side of the room and have the handler take the snake out of the enclosure. Doesn't come towards you with it. It stays on the other side of the room where you can see it out of an enclosure. Then over time, as you get okay with that, you go stand closer to the snake, a few feet closer to it, a few feet more closer to it. And pretty soon you're standing next to a person who's holding a snake. And then you finally get to the point to where you can touch the snake. And the more you touch the snake, when you're okay with that, then you can hold the tail of the snake. Just put the tail in your hand as the handler's holding the body. And as you do that, you hold a little bit more of the snake, and then you got the whole snake in your hands. And, you just keep on going with this. That's kind of how exposure therapy works. Now, can you see me doing that with my fear of necrophobia? Here, Jason, come lay in this casket. There's a pillow. It's comfortable. Oh, man. I don't know why I would ever want to get over that phobia. I know why you'd want to get over your fear of snakes, Ophidiophobia, because snakes are beautiful. They're cool to hold. They feel nice, and I like holding snakes. I like handling snakes and doing that. So getting over your fear of snakes, you should. Everybody should. But if you don't like, funeral homes, you shouldn't go spend the night in a funeral home. My family keeps trying to talk me into going to the local funeral home in town and all of us spending the night. And I'm like, for what? What is wrong with you people? Who wants to go sleep in a funeral home? What they want to do it to see me do it and to see me freak out. That's the only reason they want to do it. It'll absolutely never, ever happen. I will never do that. I don't know why they'd even want me to do that. But anyway, that's what some people want to do. My crazy family, my mom and my sister and them want to do that. What would the fear of the ocean be? I don't know. I'm not afraid of the ocean, but you know what I don't like? What I don't like, so my sister Carmen, she's got a boat and we go to the lake all the time, and I'll go get in the lake and, ski and ride the tube behind the boat and swim. I'll do all that stuff, but I don't like going to Lake Lanier. If you don't know about Lake Lanier, it is in North Georgia, and it is a very... How deep is Lake Lanier? Anybody know how deep Lake Lanier is? Put it in the chat if you know how deep it is. The deepest part of Lake Lanier is like hundreds of feet deep. And they say they made this lake by flooding a town. There's a town underneath Lake Lanier. And there's, graveyards and cemeteries and houses and churches and buildings, and at least that's what I hear, and I'm sure it's probably true, but it's so deep. And when you're in the lake, you can only see maybe 6 inches or a foot down in the water. And there's hundreds of feet of water underneath you that you can't see what's under you. I don't like that. And I had to go to Lake Lanier because somebody dumped an alligator in Lake Lanier, and the state asked me to go catch the gator. It was just a few days before a big holiday weekend was coming up. Cheesy Cheetah says it's 160 feet deep. Are you sure that's it? 160 feet? I mean, that's enough. That's way too deep, 160 feet. Now there's a lake in North Georgia. I don't remember the name of the lake, but it's in North Georgia that's several hundred feet deep. I would not jump off of a boat in the middle of that lake, even with a life jacket on. Okay. Oh, man. So when they get to be that deep, I don't like it because so many drownings have happened in Lake Lanier. I mean, maybe it's just because it's a popular lake. There's a lot of people there. And because you have a higher concentration of people, I guess that contributes to more drownings. Okay. So I get that. However, there's a lot of drownings there, and not everybody's always been found, so they're still down there. And you want me to go swimming in that and swimming around in that and filling around in that? No, I don't think so. I had to go catch a gator out of there. I stayed in the boat the entire time. I wouldn't have got out of the boat because of how, Living with Cable says Carter's Lake is 450 feet. That is insane for a lake. Why is a lake an ocean should be that deep? Well, they're deeper than that, but a lake shouldn't be 450 feet deep. That is crazy. What in the world's down there? Almost 500 feet deep. I can't imagine that. Anyway, yeah. So, but see, I don't think that is. I don't think that's an irrational fear. Is it an irrational fear? I don't think that's irrational. That's not over the top irrational. That's common sense. You don't get a lake that's 450 feet deep. Okay, that's common sense. That's not irrational. Okay. So before we get ready to wrap it up here, sorry we started this one late tonight. Like I said, we had to go enjoy my daughter's 18th birthday party that ran a little bit late, so I didn't want to end the festivities to come in here. So hopefully we won't have to start these late anymore. We'll try to keep them all at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time when we do the live stream. So before we wrap it up, talking about fear, one thing that I remembered this quote I read years ago from a Native American chief, Chief Tecumseh. Chief Tecumseh was a Shawnee chief and warrior. And there's a really long quote from him. But the very first part of that quote is this. It says to live your life so that the fear of death can never enter your heart. Let me say it again. Live your life so that the fear of death can never enter your heart. And I heard that years ago, and it's always stuck with me. So I really like that. Live your life so that the fear of death can never enter your heart. And that reminds me of 2 Timothy in the Bible, chapter 1, verse 7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear and timidity, but of love and self-discipline. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me for episode number 26. Can you believe I made it number 26? 26 episodes. That sounds like a lot. Wow, that's awesome. Okay, episode number 26, Phobias. Thank y'all for being here. I will be back next week for episode number 27. And episode number 27, the title will be, I have no idea. We'll see what happens this week and see what comes of it. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Y'all have a wonderful night. And remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I. Thank you very much for joining me, and I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review. That helps me so much in pushing this podcast out to even more people. I record every Thursday, so check back next week for a new episode of the SnakesAreUsTV podcast.